Hello everyone, and welcome to the Milan Sharma Show, a show that describes a variety of subjects through the lens of civil discourse. I'm your host Milan, and today I'll be discussing the subject of preaching in relationships. And this is not about religion specifically, like a pastor, but this is regarding preaching in relationship dynamics. And I'm going to explain why I believe preaching is the opposite of helpful. I believe it's harmful, unproductive, and in fact potentially destructive in relationships. So, first I'm going to get into the definition of what preaching is in a relationship, because the first thing that people think about with preaching is they think of a pastor preaching in church, or they think of that kind of dynamic. At least that's the first thing I really thought of. But I had a recent experience of preaching and what that entailed, and now it really hit me what that definition is and why so many people suffer in relationships because of it. And this was someone that's close to me that goes through this, so it really opened my eyes to a lot, and it made me realize how I'm grateful to have really great relationships with close people in my life. So, what is preaching in relationships? Let's bring it all together here. Preaching in relationships is the idea of somebody talking to another person, but not collaborating with them. So let me give you an example to make it a little bit easier to understand, because it's kind of hard for me to even understand it without this recent experience. So let's have this example. So let's say somebody is having a really rough time at work. They're super stressful with college, and they're in graduate school, and they're going through studies, and they have less credits per semester, but the classes are more intense. They're very difficult. There are certain trials or tribulations that are really difficult. Maybe the professor is not being supportive. Maybe the classmates or the group project are not being, they're not communicating directly with the person A. Whatever the case may be, let's narrow it down here. So, person A is going through something really difficult with college, and they're struggling with school. I'm gonna say it's a guy. So the guy's struggling with school, and comes home because he's commuting. So he comes home, and he's just super cold, doesn't want to talk to anyone, and eventually, let's say person B is a parent, asks, hey, Ben, I'm going to use Ben as an example. I'm just going to use Ben. Hey Ben, what's the issue here? Or what's wrong? What's going on? And Ben eventually tells parent A, or parent, I'm saying parent. Ben tells person B, I'm just going through this, or this is really difficult for me because my professor's not being supportive, and it's really difficult for me with this transition from undergraduate to graduate classes. Now, what person B does, how person B responds, is that he says, "Oh, okay. Well, this is what you should do this is how you go further in life. This is how you should manage your classes. This is how you should manage your time, and this is what you should do. And you shouldn't be doing all these classes if you can't handle it. And in my time, people were able to handle all these things. You should have no issue, because my parents handled all these classes with ease. And in fact, you have technology to deal with all these issues and all these problems and conflicts, and you have all these services, so you shouldn't have any issue. But I understand there's some problems at times, but you should really be able to deal with it yourself. And back in my day, blah 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 blah." That's sort of an idea what preaching is. I know saying it out loud it doesn't sound as concise, but pretty much is basically when you come to somebody for about a topic of discussion, and they come back to you with no reciprocation of emotions, no reciprocation of empathy or compassion, but they come back to you with their own narrative or their own ideological perspective on your situation. So in fact, they're diagnosing your situation based off their narrative and their point of view. And I would argue preaching is actually very selfish, whether it's a familial relationship, whether it's a friendship, romantic relationship, anything. When you're preaching at somebody, you're actually being very selfish because you're looking at it only through your lens and only how you see things. And it's very easy to do this. I fall victim to this many times in my life. But I had to think back and realize that, listen, every person's different. People deal with things very differently. People deal with conflict. They deal with just... First thing I think of is conflict with preaching. But people deal with a variety of problems differently. They do. They handle differently. They cope with it differently. Some people listen to calm music to deal with conflict. Some people exercise diligently to deal with conflict. That's something I do. Exercise, and it gets me loose. It gets the endorphins going. It really helps me out a lot. Some people take a nap and go to sleep. So there's so many different ways to cope with it. But my point is, when you're preaching, you're actually doing the opposite of being empathetic and compassionate, and you're actually driving the person away. When you drive the person away, that creates a stale relationship. So that person A is not going to come to person B for compassion or advice, but in fact, they're going to go away from them and do something that's even worse, and that is seek that counsel outside of that relationship. Now, could this be a good thing? It may be if the person they're seeking this counsel from is a good influence, but in some cases, another relationship may be a bad influence. Maybe it's a teenager, and they're seeking information or compassion from someone else, but really they're leading them down a wrong path. And now, because you're preaching at them, they go down a very dark valley that you didn't see coming because you thought you were preaching good values, but in reality, you weren't actually hearing their struggle. And that's one of the hardest things I think that anybody can go through. So I know I didn't really make a point-by-point basis in this video, but I just thought it was really important because preaching, there's no compassion and empathy there. And the reality is everybody has this tendency to seek to share their own narrative. They want to share their perspective on life because they want to help you. A lot of times they want to say, this is how I dealt with this. This is how I went through it. And in some ways that is helpful. In some ways that is actually what a person wants when they ask directly. But a lot of times people just want to hear and they want that support through the struggle that someone's dealing with. And when you're preaching at somebody, you don't feel heard at all. You don't feel heard. Your struggle doesn't feel valid at all. It doesn't seem valid because the other person's just preaching their own narrative. And if the other person has no emotional change, no empathetic response to what you're saying, it doesn't really feel like they hear you. They don't think your conflict is really valid. And therefore, what really makes up that relationship in the end? So these things I was thinking about because of a recent experience, and it makes me think a lot because it makes me realize how valuable healthy relationships are. And in the U.S., there's like many men that don't have romantic relationships. Like it keeps going up and up on Pew Research polls, and it's very difficult. It's very hard. A lot of relationships are breaking down. And I have a video on this on my channel. You can check it out, titled "The Biggest Threat to Humanity" or something to that effect. But relationships are breaking down like faster than ever before. I mean, substance abuse and all these things, they're all in decline despite our advancements in technology. And that has to make you think, how are we missing key social dynamics and just simple things that we've had in the past? Why is that going away with the advancements of technology? And that's for a separate video, but it's just a nugget to chew on for you guys watching. So with that in mind, thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe, share, like, and comment below anything you'd like. Whether you hate it, whether you love this video content, please let me know. It's very helpful. And tune in next time. Cheers.